Chapter 1.1 The Cellar by Sky. Blizzard shot flames from both his hands, sending the two nearest Desgul back down the cliff. Their bodies flailed about, knocking others and causing a domino effect. About 20 beasts tumbled into the sea. Blizzard gathered me into his arms. With the arrow still lodged in my back, we crashed through the underbrush. Frank held open the door to the underground cellar, and as soon as we were inside, he slammed it shut. I lay on my side with Ben holding the arrow so that it wouldn't fall down and pierce back out through my skin. Frank and Minnow started to speak, but Blizzard hissed, "Shh!" Then he said to me, "Let me see." I trembled in the semi-darkness in agony. The arrow was lodged in my back. When Blizzard touched it, I couldn't help making a noise, and even though I stopped immediately, in no time at all, there was snorting and bellowing outside. The Desgul sounded dangerously close, their wild noises sending shivers down my spine. Blizzard extended his arms and shot magic towards the cellar's trapdoor. "That will confuse them for a bit," he said, "but we don't have much time." As Blizzard's magic took effect, we could hear the Desgul moving off, leaving behind only the hum of insects and birds. "You okay?" asked Blizzard. "I think I'm going to faint." While I was speaking, Blizzard shot magic across my back and ripped the arrow out. I screamed, more from surprise than pain, and then covered my mouth. "Sorry," I whispered. We all sat in the darkness, hardly daring to breathe. But Blizzard's magic had stopped the Desgul from hearing my scream. Minnow squeezed my hand. I smiled at her, although I felt like weeping. "I don't get it," said Frank. "We programmed the Desgul to sleep at dawn." "I don't think the game's obeying our programming," said Minnow. A flame flared from Blizzard's hands, revealing his frowning face. He was surveying the wine. "Your parents certainly stashed some wine down here," he whispered. "I wish I had the time to have a glass." "I wish I was still at home," said Frank. "I could program Bilbo and Gandalf to come to our aid with an army of elves." Blizzard smiled. "Gandalf's a top bloke," he said. "If there was anything he could do, he'd turn up immediately." "He might," said Frank. "The programming for Gandalf and Bilbo is pretty loose." "Probably best if neither of them front right now," said Blizzard, "especially if Bilbo's in possession of the precious." Frank smiled. "Already thought of that," he said. "There will be no ring." "How can you be sure?" asked Ben. Frank shrugged. "I can't. How did any of this happen?" Ben shook his head. "Who knows?" "I hope Gollum doesn't rock up," said Frank. We all grinned, trying hard to take our minds off the Desgul and the very real possibility that the thieves might turn up. "Feeling a little better?" asked Blizzard. "We need to go as soon as we can." Blizzard was looking at me. "Just," I said. "We have to get to the wishing chair," said Blizzard, "and then far away from here." "We'll go through this wall," said Frank, looking at Ben and Minnow. "Help me bash it in?" "Absolutely," said Minnow, as all three of them started kicking the earthen wall to pieces. It was down in no time, and Frank ran into the tunnel. "All clear," he said. There was dust everywhere. Blizzard lifted me into his arms, and we followed Frank, coughing and spluttering. "Okay, we're directly under the wishing chair," said Frank. "Say the word and I'll open the trapdoor." There was a terrible bellowing back through the wine cellar. All of a sudden, someone was standing next to us. I gasped. Chapter 1.1 The Frankster by Sky. The person looked so much like Frank. "Frankster," said Frank. "At your service," said the Frankster. "Excellent," said Frank with a huge grin. "So we are still inside the game." "Possibly," said the Frankster, "but I feel very different to most days, so we might be in a twilight zone. Half game, half reality." "Greality," said Minnow, giving the Frankster a high five. "Great to meet you," said Blizzard, "but we really have to go." "Okay," said Frank, staring at the Frankster. "Can you go back that way and blast the hell out of anything that's headed this way?" "It would be a pleasure," said the Frankster. "Just last week I installed a heap of booby traps under the cellar. It was just to play a joke on Bilbo, but they'll be useful today. Frank laughed, shaking the Frankster's hand. It's an honour to meet you. Same, yelled the Frankster as he ran off, yelling as he went, Ah! Frank opened the trapdoor, and in no time at all we were in the wishing chair. The Frankster will keep them busy, said Minnow. As she spoke, we could hear loud booms deep under the ground. We all grinned, but I knew that everyone was terrified. Where are we going? Asked Minnow. Our portals really are dead ends. Trust me, said Blizzard. We're going to the safest place I know. Boo-yah, said Frank, clearly on a high after meeting the Frankster. Won't the Dezgul just follow us? Asked Minnow. Possibly, said Blizzard, but they'll be way behind, thanks to the Frankster. Back through the tunnels we could still hear the sound of explosions and a whole lot of bellowing.